Hello and welcome to the Friday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who it turns out is unsackable. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Yes, still here.
I made jokes about us parting ways yesterday, but you were just here when I came in the office today.
There you go. Yeah, basically what I'm assuming happened is you reviewed my contract, realized what my buyout clause was going to be, or my payoff clause, and you decided to keep me around. I'll take it.
It was Mourinho-esque.
Yeah, sure.
All right,
minus a couple zeros.
It's a Friday show, and some of the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a Friday show. It's a listener question show. We have 4 great listener questions to bring you.
That we do.
Shall we get started, Taylor?
Sure.
With Mark Bajarski's question.
Sure.
Mark, this is a question that's been in the hopper for a little while, but it's a big one, so we were sort of taking our time easing into it. Mm-hmm. Mark asked us to think about the greatest teams of all time, and he essentially asks, what great teams would you most like to see play against each other, and why?
Sure. All right. So I think we both had, I don't know if we both had like the same approach to this or different approaches, but for me, I kind of wanted to see 2 teams that I've heard a lot about. If I really could see any 2 teams play against each other, I think it would want to be 2 teams that I've heard so much about but never was able to actually see myself.
Yes.
So like I wouldn't mind seeing the Brazil 94 team versus the France 98 team, but I have vague memories of 94, decent memories of 98. So I have gone national team, but I've gone for 2 different ones from roughly the same era.
Okay.
I would want to see the Brazil 1970 team against the Netherlands 1974 team.
Well, one of them is a World Cup winner, the other one famously not.
The other one should have been, I would argue, but just had a rough game there at the end. Yeah, I mean, and it's because obviously you have Johan Cruyff, who's one of my favorite players of all time. I think yours too, right?
I think I might go number 1.
I think
Cruyff,
I might as well. And then you've got Pelé with 1970, but that Brazil 1970 team, it has so many other of those famous names like Carlos Alberto, like Rivellino.
But if we were headlining this, right, if you were making the poster for this, or if, say, ESPN was promoting this, it would be Cruyff versus Pelé in a battle of the ages.
And then you would probably get, I'd say Neeskens probably makes it in there, maybe Johnny Rep, somebody like that.
They'd be in the lower corner.
Yeah, I think so.
Cruyff's face would be the biggest.
Yes, and then probably you've got like the coaches back to back looking angry. But it would just be like, because that Brazil team is often characterized as like a 4-2-4. You just had a ton of attackers. If you listen to Mario Zagallo, their manager, talk about it, he disagrees. He would say that it was more of a 4-3-3, sometimes a 4-5-1. Yeah, I was reading an interview with Tim Vickery, where he was basically saying,
I didn't know this.
Yeah, that he was like, by that time we knew that a 4-2-4 wasn't effective, that it wouldn't work anymore.
It wasn't sensible?
Yeah, exactly. So we adjusted a little bit. So he would argue that they played a 4-5-1, that they were compact, but that they didn't play it in that sort of man marking, everybody do your like hard running work everywhere, because basically he said we just didn't have the fitness, we'd be too tired. So we all sat back and kind of defended in mass, and then we would push forward.
So this is like when we play indoor and we play teams who have really, really good players, but they don't like necessarily work as hard or have a man marking system. They just sit back. They know they'll eventually get the ball, and once they get it, you can't get it off them, and they'll probably pass it down the field and score.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it was interesting to read because I don't know if this is true, because I haven't read Inverting the Pyramid. You could probably speak to it better than I.
It's been a few years.
But he was saying that essentially the argument was that part of the reason why there is like a back 4 to begin with is basically because Brazil in like the 1950s knew they weren't good enough defensively, so they basically just pulled another player back instead of having the 3 defenders like in the WM formation. They're like, we got to get somebody else back here, otherwise we're in trouble. And so this team reflects that, but then it's got the creativity in the midfield. It's got the kind of the chaos in attack where you could have any player score at any given moment, including your right back, who was a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him before. His name Carlos Alberto?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's pretty decent. But then that Dutch team, I showed you some video of it. If you can, go on YouTube and watch just footage of the 1974 team.
Yeah.
Because you have amazing individual skill. You have great team passing. But you have that crazy, I would say, suicidal press where at times there's like 6 people going for one player. And it's just this weird, it looks almost like U6s, like little 6-year-olds, where they all just swarm around the ball. It looks like that, but it's world-class players.
So the video you showed me, and I had seen it before, but a long time ago, so it was like I had that sort of fresh excitement of seeing it again. It was the 1974 World Cup, and it was the Netherlands versus Uruguay, which I believe was in the group stage.
Yep.
And the most amazing thing you showed me was the we talk about a press now, where like one person presses the guy with the ball, another guy presses the guy who might receive the ball, someone presses the keeper, cut off passing options. This is different, right? This is something way more intense, and it has a target.
Oh yeah, it definitely has a target. It's also just that whole game is intense. Brazil obviously had to deal with this as well, but those Dutch guys are hard. Like, you wouldn't think it because they're all very skinny. They got the short legs, or short shorts, long legs. They seem like they would get taken down and broken in half. there are so many challenges that today would be
There's some
just
stamps,
straight
right?
reds. There's so many stamps. There's so many like 2-footed challenges.
Yep.
There's like a forearm to the face that doesn't get a call.
There's one big stamp from a Uruguay player.
Yeah.
I don't know who the Dutch player was on the floor.
Yeah.
And the referee sees it and just waves his finger at the Uruguay player.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's one where Cruyff gets an elbow to the head, and the ref sees it. There's one where the goalkeeper runs up and punches Cruyff in the back of the head. He falls down, and the ref's like, "Come on, play on, let's go."
Through it all, they kept just like passing and moving and pulling off tricks and doing crazy things. I want to get back to that crazy press because I'm so excited when you showed it to me. What I was talking about with the target is you essentially had 5 or 6 players.
Yep.
Suddenly, I don't know what the trigger was. I couldn't see what it was. 6 players press one man.
Yeah.
So they go after him and after him and after him, and it ends with a big slide tackle from like the 5th guy coming in to take the ball off of him, and then all the guys are running forward as well. That is so risky. If that Uruguayan player had known what was coming and could like quickly switch play, half the field would be open. Yeah, but instead they surprised him.
And that's why I think it'd be fascinating because as I said, I don't think Brazil would do very well against the kind of total football chaos of the Dutch side. But by the same token, you have the skillful players in that Brazil team where basically like he moved, I think it was Piazza, who's a center defensive midfielder, Zagallo, the coach, moved him back to center back because he was like, I have too many good players in midfield. I got to put him somewhere. So I'll put him at center back and he'll be a technical center back.
That sounds a little bit like what Chile did in 2014, 15.
And so with that, you would have that technical ability to avoid some of those tackles. So then it would kind of open things up a little bit. I just feel like it would just be crazy end. It might be 5-4. It might be 1-0. Either way, it would be entertaining.
I think it would be really open.
Yeah.
Who would win?
I think this is crazy. I think maybe the Dutch, if only because it seems like maybe they were the next step in the evolution of passing and possession soccer.
Yeah.
And so maybe it would just be a little bit more refined, and if no other reason because they had 4 years better equipment, which does kind of say something because you look at that ball in 1970 and you look at that ball in 1974, it's a little different. Same thing with field condition as well. So maybe Brazil 70 because they would have to play on a better field, which means they would play better. Who knows for sure. And it's kind of blasphemous, right? Because a lot of people say that 1970 team is like the best ever team to play in a World Cup.
Yeah.
Even though conventional wisdom is that the 58 team was better. So who knows?
But this is the hard thing, right? It's really hard to compare across eras.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost impossible because things change so much. Even in that 4-year span, soccer's a little different. So, yeah. But I like the idea of comparing two teams that are at least kind of close instead of like a team from 2004 versus a team from 1954.
Yeah.
Right? That would be not as helpful.
Yeah. Probably not so much. I thought about that as well because I want to do like the 70 Brazil team versus the 98 France team.
Yeah.
But again, it would be kind of too different. The other thing that I found fascinating, and then I'll let you get to yours.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about this as long as you want.
Well, I didn't know this. Again, this was Tim in that article. Tim Vickery pointed this out that one of the first things Brazil were like the pioneers in, which I didn't know, is that by 1958 they had medical personnel traveling with them to every World Cup. England.
Weren't they the first to do that?
Yeah, England didn't take a doctor, and I think until after the 1962 World Cup, they just traveled without any medical people. It's just like that's good stuff, England.
Run it off.
But it does make me wonder if
run it off, Jimmy Greaves.
Yeah, sure. Both your legs are broken. You'll be fine. But it does make me wonder if it is that they didn't bring any people until after 1962, the next tournament after 62, major tournament on the world stage.
Oh yeah, 66.
Yeah. So I wonder if it was just like they brought one doctor and that was the missing link.
He solved everything.
In which case, England today hire some doctors.
I think there's already plenty on payroll.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, the FA. Yeah,
could be.
You want to hear about my teams?
I do.
All right, so we made sort of a pact to not pick the same teams, right? So because you'd done Brazil 70 and Netherlands 74, I cursed a little bit that I couldn't do Netherlands 74. God,
so
I would have enjoyed
They're
watching
so
the
good.
videos.
Just watch the videos.
We didn't even talk about the offside trap. They had the way they did that crazy press.
The
They also
press.
did the crazy offside trap where just everybody runs forward, and if a team was wise to that, again, it would be there for the taking. But this stuff was new, and nobody could watch. Nobody could research the Netherlands 74 team and be like, oh, they're doing this crazy thing. So it takes people by surprise.
To the extent that research was so scouting opposition was so far behind the times that the coach before Zagallo coming into this tournament, or Zagallo, excuse me, he was fired because he and Pele got into a fight.
Yeah.
And they got into according to them, the initial dispute was over the fact that the old coach was saying this Italian midfielder is going to be playing as a striker. And Pele raised his hand and was like, actually, he plays for this Argentinian team. I've played against him. He's going to be playing midfield, or vice versa. And the coach was like, no, you're wrong. And they got into a big fight. Pele was right. But it was like, he was just, like, there had been no research.
Star striker, star player, and chief scout.
Yeah, it seems that way. So, yeah, there's There's a little bit of a...
It also got me thinking, if you don't mind this little tangent,
how
tough it would be for the Dutch team to do that today.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because once people saw you doing that, like, 6 players pressing the ball, pressing one player thing, and that crazy offside trap, someone easily, like Guardiola, would study that and be like, all right, next time we're gonna play a through ball and nobody move as they're running out, and then we'll have someone run on behind.
Yeah. I mean... But as you said, this was kind of like the origin of this, or like not necessarily the origin, because you could point to a lot of different influences. But that first kind of big press, that wave of pressure, it feels early on, and it reminds me of when you're coaching a team to do that press and to do that step. Yeah. Just because there are those sequences where it does feel like everybody forgot, and then from the sidelines you get the coach screaming,
Rinus Michel,
yeah, exactly. It's like offside, and then all of a sudden you just see everybody sprint forward. It's just like weird conditioning that seems to have happened.
It may even have been Cruyff doing it, because it's not even a rumor. It's more the story of that team is Cruyff was like co-coach. He had a lot of the weird ideas, and Michel's was like alongside him implementing them. It's definitely like a Lennon-McCartney type partnership.
Yeah,
Michel's and Cruyff.
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, so to my teams. Because you'd done... no, it was me that took us back. Because you'd done Brazil 70, Dutch 74, I thought, well, I'll go club teams.
I like it.
And actually, I bounced around a few different teams, because there's a lot of great club teams to choose from. In the end, I went with, I think, the 2 most successful European Cup winning club teams in history in a short spell. So my first team is Real Madrid 55-60, because they won the Champions League the European Cup, back then, 5 times in a row. This is the Real Madrid of Di Stefano and Puskás and Gento and all those guys. Up against the Liverpool FC team of roughly 77-84. I'm going to pick like the middle, like 81 maybe, when they won the European Cup then. They won that cup 4 times in that spell with Paisley as manager.
And so what are your expectations for both teams? How would it line up?
So essentially, this is a battle between... I want to say, obviously, I haven't seen that much Real Madrid 55-60, but what I have seen, it's very individual. It's a lot of, the tactics weren't as advanced then. This is way before total football and the Dutch and all that. A lot of just Di Stefano pulling a step over and accelerating away from someone. Hento, being so fast down the wing that he was unstoppable. He was like nutmegging people. And then Puskás with all his he's the one that had like clever movement, so he and Di Stefano would like switch out and it'd be tough to track. You had Copa, I think it's Raymond Copa, who's this great French playmaker. And when they brought in Puskás, they were like, Raymond, we got Puskás. You're going to have to go play on the right wing, like outside right, because they played that old WM. And Copa just said, all right, I'll go and do it, but I'll do my magic over there. So it's less of a team system, as I understand it. Yeah. Some Real Madrid fans may disagree, and more of a just individual players. And that's what gives rise to the whole Galacticos myth, right? You have these individual players doing things that are just impossible to stop. So I haven't even talked about the Liverpool team yet, but I watched the Real Madrid 7-3 win over Eintracht Frankfurt 1960 in front of 125,000 people at Hampden Park in Scotland. On YouTube, obviously. I wasn't there. I'm not quite that.
You go back in time?
No, I'm not quite that old. If I had a time machine, that might be a place to go. And just to see the number of tricks that were pulled off, like a Cruyff, I saw Gento do a Cruyff turn before it was a Cruyff turn, right? But
so
it wasn't as elaborate.
So it should be a Hento turn then?
Maybe. There's probably somebody who did it before him. And like people doing nutmegs and stepovers and all that in a way that I don't think you'd seen so much of before. Okay, then on the flip side, 20-ish years later, you've got this Liverpool team that was famous. When I was growing up, people talked about this Liverpool team, it's a bit before my time, as being the pass and move team. And like always have a triangle, always, we were talking about this at practice the other day, play the way you're facing. Right? And they just had that as a philosophy. And every time they received the ball, they would have an option, they would take it and they would play it and they would just move the ball like that. And what that meant was a lot of backwards passes, but then someone running forward to make it keep happening. Right. The key to this is a guy people will know, Kenny Dalglish.
I've heard of him.
Kenny Dalglish wore number 7. He replaced Kevin Keegan. And he played sort of like as a striker or second striker. You might call him a trequartista if you Italian and or you listen to our Soccer Terminology 201 show this week. But there's so much of Dalglish just receiving the ball back to goal, then laying it off. And they would just keep doing that and prodding at teams until they broke their way through.
So what would you expect like the overall game to look like? Would it be open-ended? Would it be kind of cagey? Would it be very individualistic?
It would all come down to, I think, the Liverpool defence, the centre-backs, Phil Thompson, Alan Hansen. I'm kind of familiar with Hansen because he was a media personality in the BBC, on the BBC after he retired. Scottish defender. Alex Ferguson had a big argument with him. Very good at like reading the game and like covering space and bringing the ball at the back. He might have been a libero in a different era. If he could handle the skills of Puskás and Di Stefano, then maybe I want to say that Liverpool's sort of team play and ball possession would beat out the individual skills of Real Madrid 55-60.
Seems like a big if.
It is, right?
Yeah.
And this is why I'm saying it's tough to compare against eras. Like the ball is heavier in the 50s, the equipment is not as good. It wasn't in black and white. So yeah, I think I honestly would I'd give the advantage to Liverpool, even though the individual players are not as good. There seemed to be more of a team system, and also a team playing 4-4-1-1 versus a team playing the WM.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a little bit of craziness. So those are your club ones. If you were to do two national teams from any era, any time period, who would you do you think?
I think I would do Brazil 70 against Netherlands 74.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I mean, it's two of the, it's also like that contrast of the team that won it and is hallowed, and the team that's is sort of remembered as losers because they didn't win it, even though they went 1-0 up like almost straight from kickoff, right?
The Dutch.
And then eventually don't lift the trophy and have never lifted the World Cup trophy. So it's kind of like all of the neuroses of Dutch football is like contained in this team and the genius of Cruyff and all of that.
Do you feel like they would have just been covered in like a ring of smoke? Because isn't that also the other story that like Johan Cruyff was just continuously smoking all the time?
Yeah.
I wonder how many of those players were just
all the way through, right?
Yeah, basically.
I can remember him on the sideline for Barcelona, in '92, smoking as they play.
Yep.
Yeah.
It does seem like one of those like old school locker rooms where you'd go in and it would be like a bunch of dudes in whirlpools smoking cigarettes at halftime. I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe other national teams I'd love to see. I'd love to see the England '66 team play against like
USA 2002.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yes, England
That's
66 against USA 2002.
Sure.
How about USA 1950 against England 1950, the rematch? I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that played again.
I feel like I know which way that goes if that were to be replayed. So I'm going to pass. And then for me, if I were going to go club, I think I would probably go just straight up Homer and say Man United 1968 versus Man United 1999. That'd be pretty fun. That'd be a pretty good time to see like peak Manchester United from the 90s versus peak Manchester United from the 60s.
Oh, just to see Best on the field is
Best and special. Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton. Yeah. I think Dennis Law was still there.
68 he was.
There we go.
Oh, good times.
Yeah, I dig that.
One other team that I thought about including was the Napoli team of like 86, 87, because it's peak Diego Maradona. It's when, I don't want to call it a one-man team, but it's kind of a one-man team. He was at such a peak that he carried Napoli all the way to the Serie A title.
It's amazing that he was able to do that without like the assistance of any sort of modern medicine or anything to kind of help his performance.
I don't think anything was ever proven.
Sure. I've seen his eyes in the camera.
To be clear, cocaine is not a performance enhancer.
Sure. Bill Burr has a line about that where he's talking about baseball in the 1970s and how everybody was doing cocaine. It's like, you think it's not a performance-enhancing drug when you can see every stitch on the baseball? Like, I'm pretty sure it is.
All right, any other shout-outs for any other teams?
I mean, there's lots of other teams, but I think then you kind of like start to water it down a little bit. And you get lost in that, like, well, could be this and could be this. And now I'm sticking with what I've got.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, we
Plus
hope...
orange and yellow, or like maybe Brazil would be in blue.
Who wears the away jersey?
I'm not sure. Either way, it would be a pretty combination.
So at least I picked red v white. It's pretty easy to...
Yeah. Orange v yellow doesn't quite work.
All right, Mark, we hope we answered your question. Let us know if we did not. Up next, we have a question from
Justin Miller. He says, what happens if Leicester City defy the odds and win the Champions League while also finishing in the bottom three of the Premier League? I know if you win the Champions League, you qualify for the tournament the following year. Would they still get relegated?
Short answer, yes.
Yep.
You absolutely get relegated even if you win the Champions League. Mostly because the two competitions are not connected in that way. Like doing well in the bigger tournament. Like one is a qualifier for the other, right? The Premier League is a qualifier for the Champions League. So just whatever you do in the Champions League doesn't affect your Premier League position.
I wonder if it does seem like you should be able to like leverage that somehow. Like if you are relegated, to be like, okay, other relegated or like team that finished 17th, we'll let you play in the Champions League if you let us stay in the Premier League.
So you want to make like your Champions League spot kind of like a designated player or targeted allocation money.
You can get rid if you need to.
You can trade it.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
So as like semi-evidence of this, it's something similar-ish has happened before, not quite the same. Wigan in 2013, the Latics, as we learned recently, they won the FA Cup. They beat Manchester City in the final, maybe 2012. So they qualified for the Europa League by winning the FA Cup. The same year, this is Roberto Martinez Wigan, they also got relegated. The following season, Wigan played in the Championship and the Europa League.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one is it Birmingham City, or did you have another one on top of that?
Yeah, so Birmingham City finished... Did they beat Arsenal?
I think they got... yes, they did.
They did, because there was the Fabianski
Zigic,
and...
yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Koscielny mess up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so but they were a championship team, right? So Birmingham City winning the Europa League as a championship team.
I think they became a championship team that season. I could be wrong. Maybe they were in the championship.
I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that. The other one is in 2002... under Graham Souness, who was a great member of that Liverpool team I was talking about earlier. He was the manager of Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn were relegation threatened. Blackburn were in the League Cup final. It would now be the EFL Cup. It was the Worthington Cup. And he proposed the idea that if we win this tournament, we should be exempt from relegation.
Yeah,
and I think he was kind of just like putting it out there to maybe
floating it just to see what happens.
Just to see if someone's like, oh yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, yes, thumbs up. In the end, I think he got Blackburn up to 12th, so it was fine.
But I think to bring it all the way back to the beginning of this question, the answer is, I think Leicester would be the first team to play in the Champions League and get relegated.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my point yesterday about why you maybe want to avoid having the reputation of first to last or first to worst or anything like that. Yeah.
All right, 2 more listener questions to come today, Taylor. One's about promotion relegation, but maybe not in the way that you are thinking. And one is about choosing your soccer team. But first, today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek, they've come along and created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets.
That's right. They do all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites to ensure you get the best possible deal. And they're all about helping you get the most bang for your buck. That's why every ticket on SeatGeek is given a grade based on value, Daryl Grove, value.
So what have you been looking into for SeatGeek today, Taylor?
Well, I looked up 2 1970s teams for purposes of this show. So stuck in the 1970s. The Who are still touring, so why not?
You are kidding me.
Nope, still touring.
So The Who must be touring gigantic stadiums.
I'm assuming so.
Where are they playing?
I think when I looked, it was all UK, and I'm sure it's all like amphitheaters and stadiums.
Okay.
Yes. That said, you're not really seeing The Who.
Why?
Right?
What are you seeing?
I don't know if John Entwistle is still with The Who. I feel like he might be dead. I'm not sure. And then Keith Moon is very dead. So yeah, you're getting half of The Who. That's fine.
I mean, as long as you get in, what is it, Daltrey and Townsend?
Yeah.
Yeah? Those are the guys, right?
I mean, I would say Wall of Sound, Keith Moon is kind of important. And John Entwistle, one of my favorite ones is when they tried to record, it's like the whole montage that ends in the song from Rushmore.
Yeah.
I can't believe it, do my eyes deceive me, that one.
Yeah.
And they wanted...
You Are Forgiven?
You Are, thank you. And they wanted to have it backed by cellos, but they couldn't afford to have people playing cello, so instead at that point of the song they just sing cello, 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 cello. It's phenomenal. Well done, The Who.
Slight tangent, but it connects. Have you seen Legion yet?
No.
I've
heard good things.
Just watch the opening scene. It's set to, is it Happy Jack, the Who song? And it's like you see the guy who is, I've forgotten his name, David Haller. You see his childhood up to adulthood as a montage set to Happy Jack.
That song is made for montages.
Yeah. It's a great... Yeah, The Who are very good for movies and TV, right?
Yeah, just ask every CSI episode.
On CSI?
Yeah, everyone begins with a Who song. That's like the theme song for every single one. Yeah.
All right, so you can get Who tickets via SeatGeek. I've been looking at tickets. I found some Sinbad tickets.
Ooh.
I have been... So he's playing down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have been fascinated by Sinbad ever since I heard him on the Mark Maron show maybe a year ago.
Are you sure it was really Sinbad? Are you sure it wasn't a factory worker and you were out of your mind?
What are you talking about?
It's an Always Sunny episode where he thinks he sees Sinbad the entire time.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah. That's one.
So yeah, I'm like Sinbad had this weird charisma and personality that I thought of him as a comedian that I wouldn't like, but listening to that interview, I was like, oh, this is my guy. This guy's excellent.
Yep.
He had a whole story. This is kind of a spoiler, but he has a million stories in this episode about how he used to pretend to be his own manager.
That's
so he would call up, and this is the way he would hustle and get shows. He would call up a venue and say, "Hey, can you book this up and coming comedian Sinbad for tomorrow night?" The venue would say, "No, we're fully booked. We can't accept any more acts." Then he would turn up the next day and say, "Hey, my manager said I'm booked in for tonight," and they'd be like, "No, we told him no." And he's like, "Well, I'm here now." And they'd be like, "All right, go on stage." And then in his telling, he would go on stage and kill it.
Of course, yeah. I had been wondering why you've only been wearing windbreakers for the past month and a half. Now I have my answer. I also think Hannibal Buress did the same thing, only he does it with getting concert tickets. I think he has a story about going to see... I forget.
That's just fraud, right?
Yeah, basically, he would call up as his agent and say "Oh, Hannibal's going to be in town. Can I get some?" I think it was like a Kevin Hart like comedy show.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure, I guess. I can't remember who it was exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was Hannibal Buress.
Well, I mean, if you can't scam free tickets, like Hannibal Buress says, you can at least get a $20 rebate using SeatGeek. How would people do that, Taylor?
You download the SeatGeek app, you go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. You enter the promo code TSS. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase.
So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code TSS today. And I would say if you're a Total Soccer Show listener, you want to support the show, then one of the things you can do is download the SeatGeek app. It is 100% free to download. And entering the promo code TSS, also 100% free to do.
Also true.
All right, 2 more questions.
That's also true.
Is that Who song?
Nope. Tenacious D.
You sang it in the Who style?
I did.
2 more questions today, Taylor. First one is from Thomas Wilkins, a.k.a. Dragon. He says, I understand promotion relegation as much as an American sports fan can and would enjoy to see it in Major League Soccer. However, there is one thing I'm a little confused about. In a previous show, you mentioned Ajax 2, Young Ajax is who we're talking about, Ajax reserves, are in a good position to be promoted into the Dutch top-tier league where Ajax currently play. Can this happen? Has that ever happened? So we were talking about this because of Gideon Zellem is at VVV Venlo, right? And I think them and Ajax 2, or Young Ajax, are sort of battling it out for top spot in the Eerste Divisie, which is the division below the Eredivisie.
Correct.
So, do you know the answer to the question?
I mean, I'm assuming the answer is that no, it's not allowed because I'm sure there's like various reasons for it, but no, it's not allowed. You can't have 2 teams. I'm assuming the language is something along the lines of owned by the same individual or group competing in the same competition, because I imagine it sparks conflicts of interest. Well, now, there are leagues where it is the case, but not in the major European leagues that I know of.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that then. So the specific situation in the Netherlands is this only happened a few years back, is that the B teams of like Ajax, PSV, Feyenoord, AZ, basically the big teams put their reserve/youth teams, it's mostly young players, that's why you see the young Ajax players, that's why they're called Young Ajax, into the division below. So before these teams did not compete against adult teams before like 2013, I want to say. The rule is they always have to be one division below the parent team. So, for example, if Ajax got relegated, which is unthinkable because it's never happened, and Young Ajax won the second tier, they would get relegated. So Ajax would be then in the second tier, and Young Ajax would go to the third tier. So no matter what you do, you always have to be one division below your parent team.
I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that happened to Villarreal. I believe Villarreal a couple years ago were relegated out of Serie A. That would not make sense. Out of La Liga, and Villarreal's B team playing in Segunda, I believe, had like mid-table or had like near the top of the table that season. They did get relegated for that very reason.
So interesting, right? Same in Portugal. I looked into this. I want to say in stronger leagues, like say the Bundesliga, they're not allowed in the top 2 divisions at all. That's why Bayern Munich second team, Borussia Dortmund 2, which obviously teams we pay a bit of attention to because like Julian Green would be there and Flores would be there. They do not allow them above the third tier because I think because German football is so strong, right? The second division of German football is a lot stronger than the second division of, say, Dutch football, right? As Leander Schilakens pointed out to us when ZLM got that move.
Exactly. So the only one that comes to mind in terms of a league where you can have multiple owners, aside from, MLS, it's single entity, so I guess that doesn't quite fit the mold, but you had at times when
when MLS was struggling, there was a time when there were multiple owners of the same team.
But as I recall, in our conversations with Tom Marshall, he pointed out that there are multiple Liga MX teams that have the same owner, and you have problems with like suddenly one team selling a player for no reason to another team for no reason, and wait a minute, they're owned by the same people, and it might be that they're like shell corporations or different people from the same family own different teams, but it's kind of the same thing. Either way, I know that there are occasionally conflicts of interest in Mexico.
And the point is, there are different rules in different countries, right? So, for example, the German one, you can't be above the third tier. In Liga MX, maybe you can own multiple teams. In England, there was a vote. I didn't know this, or maybe I did know this, but I forgot it. In September 2016, the English Football League voted whether or not to allow Premier League B teams to compete in the English Football League. So you would have had a similar setup where, like, Manchester United B could have gone like as high as the Championship, but could never then be higher than Manchester United, so they couldn't be in the same division as Manchester United. English Football League teams said no.
No thanks.
And honestly, I genuinely think it would be beneficial to, say, the England team to have that happen, right? Because then you would have these youngsters would be able to play against, like, I don't know, against Huddersfield or against Wolves or against, proper tough teams. But it would also the competition like the Championship is also self-supporting enough that it doesn't need to be watered down. Though like, the competition is strong, it's got its own TV deal, like big enough crowds, 20, 30,000 to go see Wolves, for example, that it doesn't need it, and it would water it down.
We'll also imagine, just like in those top two flights, you have to imagine there's a decent number of teams that have that academy team, that B team, and if all of a sudden all of them were allowed to participate, you are knocking a lot of other teams out of like the top 4 leagues.
And you might put, some League 2 teams might end up going out of business because they'd get forced down and down. Yeah.
So that would not be great. That would not be great.
So there you go. That is the setup with promotion relegation in most European leagues.
Now, the other thing that maybe kind of plays into this, though, is, as I talked about on Goalmouth this week, you do have the issue at, say, RB Leipzig and Red Bull Salzburg, where you've got 2 clubs owned by the same group who are both likely going to be competing in the Champions League next year, or both qualifying but not competing because there are rules in place that say 2 clubs owned by the same owner cannot participate in the same European competition.
So because Leipzig and Salzburg are both owned by the Red Bull ownership group, UEFA will not let them both enter the Champions League.
Yeah.
All right.
As far as I understand it, yeah.
Yeah, and we had a couple of requests on Twitter to maybe talk about this. So I'm thinking, here are 2 options. One, Red Bull pull some shenanigans, like they kind of did to get Rasenballsport Leipzig going, right?
Yep.
They could maybe set up some shell company, like you kind of talked about with Liga MX, and have it so that they're technically owned by separate shell companies, right?
Yep.
Or they could have maybe someone hold the organization for a year so that it's legal to enter the Champions League. I would not be surprised if that happened.
Yeah, just put it in blind trust. It'll be fine.
Or playoff.
I mean, that would be awesome, right?
The Red Bull Champions League playoff.
It would be awesome.
You'd sell tickets to that.
You would. I feel like we know who would win that. But
yeah, but you'd not so easily that it's a foregone conclusion, right?
Yeah.
You'd still be like, come on, Salzburg, let's see if you can do it.
Or the Red Bull soft drink company with its vast amounts of money will find a way to make something happen.
Oh, well, that would be, then they'd be in all sorts of trouble, right?
Well, I don't even mean necessarily like bribery-wise. I mean more so hiring the most expensive contract lawyers the world has to offer to find little loopholes of like, well, actually, if you do this, or, well, actually, they're not named the same, or I'm sure there's little phrases in there that can be manipulated.
I thought you were saying they would fix the playoff game to make sure that Leipzig got into the Champions League.
Maybe that too.
To be clear, to Red Bull's legal team, that is not what we're suggesting.
I am curious what happens if one day, on the off chance, both Watford and Udinese qualify, because aren't they owned by the same ownership group as well?
I think so, yeah.
And maybe it explains why Man City or City Football Club or whatever the ownership group is have not bought multiple clubs in multiple. Yeah.
Whew, okay. Football's getting very complicated, right?
Lots to figure out.
All right. Final question of today. It comes from Stephen Brandt. We know Stephen Brandt, host of the Yellow Card Pad. Stephen says, we can all agree that the sport is growing in America, but if someone were to ask both of you what club to follow, he's talking about new fans, I think, what club to follow, what would you say? And I believe we've answered this question before, but maybe it's worth refreshing. We also have someone who answered this question themselves. We'll get to that in a second. What would you say if someone was just said to you, hey, I saw a soccer game on TV. It looked amazing. I want to pick a team to follow. I want to have that passion. I want to have a team to follow. What would you say to them?
I would say follow your spirit animal, which should be Leslie Jones. And if you recall, the way she got into soccer was
Seattle?
Well, no, basically, if you recall that day, she started by watching the Premier League, and then there was soccer on the entire day, and she just kept watching soccer and watching soccer and watching soccer, and eventually, I believe, fell in love with Jordan Morris, and so that's how she landed on Seattle. But it came about because she watched a bunch of teams play, she found one that she kind of naturally was drawn to, that became her team, and now she has a Les Dog Seattle Sounders jersey that she has worn at least once on SNL.
I will say she was also temporarily an NYCFC fan when they were in the playoffs, so I think she kind of narrowed it down to the team that was in the cup final.
Right, which is fine. And I think that if you are just getting into it, you shouldn't buy into the idea that like it has to be one club and that's it forever. Like once
you can like look around, you can experiment around a bit.
Yeah, obviously that's the freedom of not like of kind of coming into the game late. Is you can watch different leagues and different teams and see who you're drawn to.
It's like Tinder.
Yeah, well, except that you should, much like Tinder, I guess you shouldn't date around too much though, because then I would say, moving away from the Tinder analogy because I can't think of one. If you are, say...
To be clear, we were both married before Tinder was even a thing.
Yep.
So,
This is very true. But if you are, say, a Man United fan the year they win the title, and then a Man City fan the next year, and then a Chelsea fan the next year, and you're very proud of that fandom, then it loses a little bit of something.
At some point, you got to choose.
Yeah. So I think watch a bunch of games, and slowly, naturally, you'll figure out a team or league that you really enjoy.
Okay, so somebody followed your advice last time that you gave that answer, which I think was a couple of years ago at least. It was Billy Harding, and Billy Harding recently emailed us to say, I remember, so he didn't know about Stephen's question, right? This was just kind of an email out of the blue. It was a great thing to receive. So Billy emailed us to say, I remember years ago listening when you guys suggested that the way to get involved with football after the World Cup, so this would be 2014, following European football, and my quest to find a team was a challenge. One person wrote, you don't pick your team picks you. Truer words have never been spoken. Billy says, I still remember the moment I realised Southampton was going to be my team. Tadic backheel passing the assist to Klein on their first goal of the season, and I jumped up from the couch. Then I was wondering, why did I just jump up off the couch? I remember this goal. I remember watching this goal. Later that night, after they lost 2-1 at Liverpool to start the season, I went to researching everything I could about them. To my dismay, everyone was forecasting them to relegation after their coach fled to Spurs, that would be Pochettino, and they sold most of their best players.
Not this guy. This guy right here.
That's coming up. Ronald Koeman came in with a bunch of unproven players. Tadic, Pele, Mane, Bertrand, Fraser Foster to replace the players they sold. Ricky Lambert, Luke Shaw, Lallana, Lovren, Callum Chambers. This would have been like an out, right, for Billy? At this point, you'd be like, oh, all the players I got in for,
exactly.
They're gone, I'm out. No. Taylor gave me some hope with his EPL prediction, saying that they would not be relegated and would finish in the top 15. They did better than that, right? I think he went lone wolf on that prediction.
Correct.
You're so proud.
I am. It's like my one prediction I got right that season.
Since then, Billy says, I did everything I could to get a further sense of their history, how close they came to folding. The Dell, that's their old stadium, the Academy, dropping down to League One before getting back to the Premier League. Fast forward to today, and this email came like a few weeks ago. There were tears of joy seeing Shane Long beat the keeper in extra time to put Southampton in the EFL Cup final. So here we are. This is Billy's journey of fandom, right?
Yeah.
He has gone from just like Tadic's backheel. He felt something within him, didn't know it was there. Stuck with them through the selling players. Maybe Taylor helped him a little bit by saying, hey, they're better than you think. It's going to be all right. And now here we are, the EFL Cup final. If people don't know, Southampton versus Manchester United this weekend. Southampton could win some silverware.
Indeed. And I do want to, his email does remind me of one other key point that I wanted to bring back when talking about choosing a team. A key piece of advice, you can love the United States, you can root for the U.S. national team.
That was going to be my advice. Choose the U.S. national team and then filter it through from there.
That works, but don't filter too much, because I was going to say, like, I think the example we gave was if you chose to be a Fulham fan because they had 5 Americans playing there at one point, and that's why you love them, and then all those Americans ended up getting sold, and now they're in the championship, maybe it's harder to watch them. So I would say don't just go with the players you know, and it seems like Billy didn't do that. That even though he liked that iteration of Southampton when they got rid of those players, it wasn't like, oh, I love Nathaniel Klein, so now I'm just going to follow him. It was, I enjoy this team, so I'll stick with the team.
And that is a thing, right? I know people start to point Everton because of Tim Howard, but I also know people have stuck with Everton because they've grown to love the team through that. So I guess you've just got to... I think it's okay to follow a US national team player to a European team, but then if you're watching the team and you realise, like, I'm only watching Fulham for Clint Dempsey, I'm only watching Borussia Mönchengladbach for Fabian Johnson, and then you're only watching Fabian Johnson, I think you've got to mentally realise that what you're doing is supporting Fabian Johnson.
I think you're also not watching much Borussia Mönchengladbach based on recent run of form.
Right, yeah. But you know what I'm saying? If you don't feel something for the rest of the team, then maybe you've got to realise why you're watching that game and be honest with yourself. Yeah? Because otherwise you're going to be in a tough spot when Fabian Johnson leaves.
And no one wants to be in a tough spot.
No one wants to be in a tough spot. So, that seems like good advice?
Yeah, sure.
All right. And I want to say best of luck.
I appreciate your voice going up at the end. That always sparks a ring of confidence.
Best of luck to Billy Harding's Southampton this weekend.
Disagree, but sure.
Is it a big deal to win the EFL Cup for Manchester United this season?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No.
I would have thought like Mourinho getting his first silverware kind of thing would be something that would propel the club even farther forward.
It's the League Cup, so who knows? I mean, that said, I would be surprised. I mean, I know like Mkhitaryan is going to be injured. I forget, somebody else went out with injury. Oh, Michael Carrick went out with injury in the Europa League, and that was on Wednesday too. So whether or not you play them this weekend, I don't know. But it is one more game, so it's not that much in terms of the fixture congestion. So maybe they will go for it just to get a little bit of silverware.
Oh, man. No, I really hope Southampton win with that attitude from Man United fans.
Oh, I mean, I would, don't get me wrong, I would be very happy to win it. I don't know if Jose Mourinho cares as much as, say, getting top 4, maybe winning the Europa League, maybe Maybe winning the FA Cup again. Who knows?
All right.
And he won the Community Shield. He's already got his silverware. Get out of here,
That
Daryl
does
Grove.
not count.
Get out of here.
That does not count. It's a preseason friendly.
Quit trying to diminish Jose's achievements.
I'm not.
Your anti-Portuguese bias is coming through.
All right, thank you to Mark, to Justin, to Thomas, and to Stephen for all the questions that we answered on today's show. We hope you enjoyed them. Before we go, we have just the one scouting report because it was a very exciting scouting report. We couldn't leave it out of today's show.
That's right. It comes from Carolyn, scouting Kellen Acosta, the 21-year-old FC Dallas midfielder, not right back or left back. Acosta scored a brace in yesterday's CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinal win over Panamanian side Arabe Unido. Daryl, with his massive translation skills, was able to figure out that translates to
Arabs United.
There it is, yeah. Founded by Arab immigrants to Panama, apparently, in 1998, I think it was, or 1996 or something like that.
Oh, I didn't realize
And then
that.
they've since won 12 titles. So good work there. As Carolyn reports, the first goal is worth a watch, if for nothing more than the commentator's enthusiastic golazo. It was pretty good.
You didn't. There were 4 O's on that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to compete with that. It was a beautiful strike with his first touch from just outside the box that landed in the top left corner of the goal, where the return address goes.
Is that Carolyn? Or
Yep, that's Carolyn.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yep.
The second goal is good too. It's kind of a chip. Yeah. Kellen Acosta doing things.
So this made Daryl Grove ponder, is it ridiculous to think that we could see Kellen Acosta start in these March World Cup qualifiers?
Right, because here's why. I think people might think of Kellen Acosta being cut from the big 30-plus Bruce Arena January camp to the 23-man roster for the friendlies, but actually he was injured, right? He had an ankle injury. We don't know. Unless it's been said and I've missed, what Arena thought of Acosta during the camp. He may have been super impressed, and he may have been one of the guys. He may have been the way we're talking about Sebastian Lletget now, is possibly starting against Honduras. We could have been talking about Kellen Acosta if not for that ankle injury. So if Acosta impressed in camp, and Acosta impresses at the start of the MLS season, which it looks like he's primed to do, right, with 2 goals in the CONCACAF Champions League.
Scoring Jermaine Jones-style goals, I'll say.
Yes, right.
Rip
He's
from
also,
distance.
if I've got this right, he partners Gretzo in that Dallas midfield right now. Remember Gretzo, the defensive midfielder? Which means he's kind of free to do a bit, do some defensive work, be a bit more Jermaine Jonesy and drift forward as well. We could be looking at the new Jermaine Jones in Kellen Acosta.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
I wonder how he'd feel about that classification.
He'd say he was better.
Yeah,
maybe.
that works.
Yeah. So eyes on Kellen Acosta for the start of the season to see if he's ready for the March World Cup qualifier.
All right. Ink update. Daryl has it all over his hands again.
Oh, I did not know. Maybe it's certain pens do it.
Sure. It must be some absent-minded way you hold it.
Yeah.
That's all I can figure.
It's because the conversation with you is so engaging, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. I'm sure that's what it is.
If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. Take a monthly subscription. You will be helping us to make more and more and more Total Soccer Shows. You will keep this train on the tracks. Subscribe at $5 a month. We'll assign you a young player to scout. If you go to $10 a month, we guarantee to answer 1 question a month on the show.
We do indeed.
We do indeed. All right, Taylor, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Right back at you.
Thank you. This evening, there is a soccer game going on. The US Under-20s play St. Kitts and Nevis. We are not going to be doing a post-match review on that because it's kind of, with all due respect to St. Kitts and Nevis, their U20 team should not be a big challenge for the US Under-20s. I hope I am not eating those words.
Yeah, I think if you're eating those words, somebody else is eating them harder, and that man's name is Tab Ramos. So
right.
there will be more blame to go around than
Should we
just
say
you.
emergency podcast if the US loses to St. Kitts and Nevis? I'm realising only now saying this, I'm realising how arrogant this sounds, and we could be in trouble.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I'm the opposite. I'm not willing to say that because I'm not willing to commit to doing an emergency podcast. I got plans, baby.
If your phone goes and it's a Skype number, that something bad has happened down in Costa Rica.
All right.
All right, Taylor Rocky.
I promise you send that straight to voicemail. So,
Taylor Rockwell, thanks. Oh, I've got one more announcement, if you'll indulge me. We can confirm now there will be a second Total Soccer Show live show here in Richmond. It will be sort of a trivia night, not just like pub trivia. Also, there'll be a video interactive segment where we watch some footage and have a big old pub quiz and Total Soccer trivia night. It is March 23rd, downtown in Richmond, Virginia. It's going to be at Penny Lane Pub. You'll be hearing more about that in the future, but this is your early warning.
you will, but as long as you're announcing stuff, I'll go ahead and also announce that we are In terms of doing things for the second time, we're going to be the Richmond Kickers commentators for the second season.
Yeah, so this has been news for a while, right?
Yep.
But we haven't properly announced it yet. And it turns out the Kickers are going to be on CBS here in Richmond. So we're going to be doing some announcing for the Kickers on CBS, part of this really good TV deal that the Kickers have got locally. That's really, really big news for the Richmond.
Daryl Grove has promised to be in a full suit for every broadcast, even when it's 105 degrees outside with 90% humidity. Yep.
I'm going to be wearing the exact same thing I wore last year.
I think if there were an event in which we were actually on screen, I do think we would like throw on blazers, but I think we would go like the justified judge route and just like not wear pants under. Like it would just be our top half, and then we'd have like short shorts on to balance it all out. I hope you're okay with that plan.
Can we say we'll?
I guess what I'm trying to say is I've ordered us Angus Young style outfits that we're going to be wearing.
Oh, if it's Angus Young, I'm in.
Okay,
100%.
cool. All right, cool.
Yeah, on the highway to hell. All right, Taylor, thanks again.
All
Listeners, thank you for listening all the way to the end if you made it this far. We will be back on Monday, and we're planning our big Major League Soccer 2017 preview, Eastern Conference, Western Conference, very specific predictions. Hopefully we will talk to you again then.